So, hi everybody, and welcome to Communikarma with me, Nyla, the show where I interview guests that are involved in issues that matter and some of the issues that should matter more. And I actually pick their brains about what they're doing and ask some of the awkward questions that you've all got in mind but daren't ask. So today I'm very, very privileged to have as my guest Nathan Coyle. Welcome, Nathan.
Hi, Nyla. Thank you so much for having me. It's an absolute pleasure and an honour.
Thank you. And Nathan is a PeaceTech Adviser of all things, which sounds like a really, really interesting job to have, Nathan. And he is based at the Austrian Centre for Peace, which again, I am in awe of that job title, Nathan. So tell me a little bit, first of all, about what being a PeaceTech Adviser is, and a little bit more about the Austrian Centre for Peace, and how did a boy from Dudley actually get to be a senior PeaceTech Adviser at the Austrian Centre for Peace, of all things?
Well, Niall, a lot of blagging, I'm not going to lie. But yeah,
so the Austrian...
it is always useful, especially a bloke from Dudley. So the Austrian Centre for Peace is based in Vienna and Schleiling, which is a castle on the Austrian border of Hungary. It's very, very beautiful, and I get to call that my office. We are a conflict resolution organisation, so we get involved in mediation and bringing people together and how we can promote peace, end conflict, and bring an end of wars. My role is a bit of a weird one because PeaceTech is a fairly new initiative. You could say it's a buzzword, and I would probably say it is a buzzword too. But my role is to create this space around PeaceTech. And the good thing about buzzwords is usually there's something that's starting and it's very, very young. What we're trying to do with PeaceTech at the Austrian Centre for Peace is build communities around PeaceTech. So instead of people like me banging on, talking about PeaceTech, bringing in people who are really passionate about PeaceTech, who are working in PeaceTech, and who can share their experiences, because the way I've always worked in my life is, learning from mistakes, and I've made plenty of mistakes. And in peace building, that is the backbone, basically, of learning, making mistakes, because when you make mistakes like that, the consequences can be very big. So that's what we're trying to do with PeaceTech. Again, it's a very, very odd word, and it does sound like two words that have been forced together, but maybe they have.
And what do those two words force together? What actually comprises the discipline? I don't know whether I can call it a discipline, but the area of work that is PeaceTech. I mean, I'm just going to hazard a guess here, but it's technology used to promote peace. What sort of technologies? What do PeaceTechers do?
Okay, so everything and above. So peace technology basically is the big word. But so we've had to come up with a byline for what PeaceTech is and how we explain it. The way we explain it at the Austrian Centre for Peace, and if you listen to other PeaceTech experts, I'm sure they would say something different. But PeaceTech refers to the use of technology to address conflicts, reduce violence, and promote peace and social cohesion. It encompasses various fields such as communication, information sharing, data analysis, and community engagement. So that's the official line around PeaceTech. But PeaceTech's only been around for 10 years, if that, and it hasn't really had much traction until the last 3 or 4 years. But this is a real opportunity for change makers in peace building to have a say in what PeaceTech will look like going forward. One of the things that we're doing in Austria at the moment is, when I first started working in peace building, especially hearing the word PeaceTech, you saw all these really big institutions around the world, big global universities, huge foundations setting up PeaceTech hubs, so innovation labs. And it was kind of looked like a bit of a land grab. And I see that myself from before this job, working in social enterprise and NGOs, where you have that founding mentality where people just found loads of things, set up things, and that kind of see that within happening in PeaceTech. But what we're doing, we're setting up Well, our own innovation lab, and I know it sounds terrible now, but what we're going to do is around community building. So instead of like bringing people into us, we're going to push people out into the world. So again, showcasing exceptional talent within peace building. But one of the things I really want to concentrate on, I don't want to scratch the back of other tech people or other civic tech minded people like myself. I want to kind of get peace builders into using technology more and how they can use it in their own work and capacity building, because technically that is my area of work at the Austrian Centre for Peace, where our department is around capacity building. And what better tool to build capacity is tech. We're having this lovely conversation today, which we wouldn't have been able to do 15, 20 years ago. And obviously things like that are, have massive power to communities and people.
Well, never mind 15 to 20 years ago. I mean, even 5 years ago, I think it would have been pretty hard to have such a video experience across the miles. But picking up on using technology to enhance communities and so on, and empower communities, give me some examples of how technology is used in a practical way to assist different types of communities. I mean, I know that you work all over the world, so presumably that would be a bit different in a sub-Saharan African location compared to, say, an area of the UK or the US or somewhere.
Yeah, sure. So let me give you 2 examples. So one example is from my experience. So again, this activism and hacking, civic hacking, which I know we'll talk about a little bit later. And the idea of that is, people who are activism minded, community minded, who have some digital skills, who come together and want to change their local environment. So the environment, for example, people can come together and use data to see where there's pollution, and you can put together campaigns to hold your decision maker accountable. Which actually, there was a really good example in Birmingham, in Balsall Heath, where as people know, live in sunny Balsall Heath, that the road that goes through it is one of the most polluted roads in Europe, which shocked me. And obviously local activists used police data, police.uk data, to rally local government to start to take this serious. It can be anything from water shortages all over the world to measuring if government services are working better. So my bread and butter or my milk, I love, absolutely adore making life really hard for decision makers, for our MPs, for people who sit in our local councils, making them want to do better and engage with citizens. Technology is the best way to do that, because if you can present people with data and problems and how to solve them, they have to engage with you. In regards to sub-Saharan Africa, you can get a little bit more nuanced, because even though technology is everywhere in the world, technology looks very different. So not many people would have posh laptops, mostly laptops that hardly work, but everybody has got a smartphone. And a lot of the work at the moment is how can we connect peace builders to data. One project called PeaceEye, which is a really cool project we're working in Austria with the University of Salzburg, and a guy called Andreas Papper, who's a really good guy, is looking at how we can make satellite data accessible to communities who are living there. So, for example, if you look at South Sudan, so where for us here in sunny Birmingham, where if there's a problem with pollution, like we say, or water shortages, or not enough green spaces, we can collect that data, and that data is relevant to them. But data that is relevant to people of South Sudan might be movement data, movement of tribes, tribes going, and would this be a point for conflict? Water shortages, because it's the lifeblood, and also cattle. So if cattle goes missing, sometimes can lead to conflict. So it's very, very juxtaposing ways how to use data. But personally, I think they're both very, very similar and both just as relevant.
Yeah. So it's really picking up on the use of data and using that as evidence for, either challenging decision makers, or by or if you, for example, I can think of a context in Birmingham where I live, that if you are wanting to put in a bid for some community improvement, then having that sort of open data can vastly, sort of sway a decision maker, because there are the facts in front of you. So really, really interesting, actually, Nathan. And I love the example of the Moseley Road in Balsall Heath, which is not very far from where I live myself. So thanks for using that example.
But yeah, before we move on, I just want to kind of just regard what you said. I've been banging the drum for years about people using open data for capacity building and fundraising. And, I think when it comes to data, it looks very inaccessible to people because, again, it's designed by technologists, it's been designed by corporate entities. And if you look at any open data portal in the world, they look like businesses, don't they? They're not very open. But obviously for third sector and community groups, data is incredibly important, especially the point you made of funding. I mean, if we look at the COVID-19 pandemic, for example, so many fantastic and brilliant charities and community groups went to the wall because of had to find other areas of funding. There's a lot more money going around now for third sector organisations than there was before the pandemic. So NGOs, community groups need to be far more agile, and so using open data is a great way to do that. And obviously reporting and journalistic and campaigning stuff, but it all boils down to that one thing of how can we get money back into the pockets of organisations that really deserve and do that excellent work. Because I know so many people, and me coming from Dudley myself as a young person, my family depended on organisations such as this, which is why that I've kind of grown up to be like, these must be protected at all costs. And so I've been banging that drum for years, and it's absolutely fantastic to hear you say that, Nyla, because we're on the same page.
Absolutely. Thanks, Nathan. And so that's a really good use of technology for peace, use of open data sets. And I love the visualization that's available now for these data sets. It's like mind blowing, the things that you can actually see and see the changes over time and so on. I'm sure that you may agree, it's visually quite stunning. But so that's the open data. What are the forms of technology related work can be done under the banner of peace?
Everything, really. I mean, I've come to the stage of my life now where I think technology should be a human right. It shouldn't be just something that you have the financial ability to access it. So everything that we use technology for can be used for peace building. Everything from social media to listen to what is going out there. If there are uprisings, or if especially political uprisings in anywhere really, if you look at the United States, for example, to how we can use documentation of mobile phones, to how we can use visual communication like this. But then it can also go to the more complicated manners. So in Austria at the moment, if I give you a proper example, that we're working on using virtual reality and mixed reality to enhance training. And so what we're looking at now is how can we offer more hands-on experience using virtual reality, which could be anything from how do we use a radio when you're in a field, what to do in certain situations like checkpoints. CPR is a really good one as well that we're working on. And the thing again, before when I started the podcast, and we were talking about learning from mistakes. And I think a lot of these projects, which you will see come out in the next couple of years, if you keep an eye on them, most of them will fail because that's how tech works.
Right.
That's how any innovation works. That's how tech works. So it'd be really interesting looking back on not just my project, projects all over the world and different peace centres and whatnot. What is the valuable learning from the failures? Because it's all wonderful, isn't it, to have conversations about technology, using VR for peace building, and another project working on using AI for pedagogical methods. So, training and education. If I'm training someone in Austria or wherever, that we can use AI to monitor skills, and if that person needs more help, then we can recognize that quickly. But again, even though I'm really up for these projects, and I can't wait to see them come to fruition and whatever they do, but I would never take any downheartedness in failure, because again, that's the whole peace building model is based on that again. So I keep talking about failure, which is really weird and a really positive podcast.
Well, to be honest, I'm kind of thinking a little bit controversially perhaps, but it does sound like an ideal job, kind of a millennial type thing, that you can do something for peace and it's around gadgets and sort of techie type stuff, and it doesn't matter if you fail and stuff. I mean, it is kind of a bit of a millennial dream.
You are right. I mean, like, it is very, very serious stuff, but I do feel, exceptionally lucky to do what I do. And I feel it's not just because of, where I've got to, in my career, because, like, for example, I ran an NGO for like 7 years before I did this. So, I've earned my stripes. And,
oh God, yeah.
I mean that in a way of, like, obviously I'm not like on mega money or anything, but I was working in an NGO, especially running it yourself. You're basically a volunteer for most of the time. You know what I mean? So I do this because I love doing this, and again, that's why I feel so lucky, because the Austrian Centre Peace kind of took me on and went like, okay, well, this guy comes from a different world, because my background is in civic technology and international development. Before this, I would never have considered going into peace building, and the only reason why I went into peace building is because of my lovely partner Syra, who is an academic in transitional justice, and she's living over here at the moment because she's from Holland. And so she used to tell me all about peace building, and I was just like, well, it's a bit similar to what I do, because accidentally I've worked in places like Palestine and Kosovo, North Macedonia, Colombia, working with government. So I was kind of sometimes working in peace building without knowing I was working in peace building, because working with those governments and that kind of stuff. But no, like, it is fun. It's a great job. Like, it's I feel like a kid in a playground sometimes, and I get the power to do what I want to do in reason. I felt like that sounds terrible, sound like a super villain. But I get the power to do what I want to do within reason. But the reason why I get that power is because of, like, it's not a job; it's like a way of life. And and I don't really. I do, of course, work in peace building, and I would see myself as a peace builder. But everybody kind of sees themselves as a peace builder in some way or another. I always identify as an activist, and I've made it very, very clear at the Austrian Centre for Peace, even though, yes, I do have to work with senior figures in government and etc., especially EU level. I'm more interested in those people who are volunteers in the field, on the ground, who need support, and being just basically a microphone for them to enable to use me, whatever conduit they can, to put their what their needs out there. Because I think if PeaceTech doesn't grow, and again, why I've been talking about community building, for it to grow, we need to have a co-design mentality with community organizations, and what are their needs, and what are the gaps, and like, how can we address them? And then all I am is just someone who's a springboard and go, okay, well, this is what people are saying. We've put together X project. You do something about it. You're a decision maker. You do something about it. So, yeah, like, again, I just feel privileged to work with some of these people who are activists, who have the real challenging jobs of having to promote peace in their own countries, who have to have extreme dangers, every single day to live their life.
Sure.
And all I do is sit behind a computer and tap away. But whatever I can do to put them in the magnifying glass, instead of people like me. And I know there are plenty of people like me who like the limelight and who kind of want to put themselves in those positions. But it's not about people like me; it's about them. So yeah, my job, guys. I love my job. I'm desperately lucky, but also I do take it with a hint of responsibility because what can I do to end conflicts?
Yeah,
They
yeah.
can,
Well, enabling people is clearly a really important role, Nathan. And and you've mentioned a number of different areas there where there've been very serious conflicts and ongoing conflicts. And what has really gained my attention is the use of technology to enable what's going on in terms of conflict, active conflict. And one of the things that you do sometimes hear about is the use of hacking. So I've moved on to that topic now, which I've been dying to do for the whole of the interview, because I saw that on your site that you do courses and training people in ethical hacking. Now, this is one of the things that we're all sitting in our living rooms and we hear about people doing hacking and so on, and hacking for good. And, and you kind of get a picture in your mind of some kid sitting in a darkened bedroom, furtively doing stuff on a laptop. But is that reality? I mean, what is, first of all, what is hacking for real basics? Then what is ethical hacking? And what's the context of this in terms of peace tech?
Yeah, so hacking in a nutshell is bending technology to your will. So a lot of people use programming skills in the negative sense, because let's face it, hacking has a negative connotation. And so, bringing down websites, causing all sorts of trouble, making sure they can make life as horrible for people, holding data ransom, which you see a lot at the moment, and uncovering dark, deep secrets of people and then putting them out there for anyone to look at. Ethical hacking is around how can we use those skills against people like that. So ethical hacking is mostly around cybersecurity, and so how people can protect themselves online. But before I come to ethical hacking, I think I have to kind of, I come from a civic hacking background. So this idea of bringing ethical hacking into what we're doing at the moment is because of that. And so, I've spent a lot of time in Germany, and one of the projects there is called Code for Deutschland. And what they do is they kind of bring together, we've talked about it briefly before, but activists and community organizers with no tech experience and coders. And then they go to a pub or a cafe, and then they will talk about the issues that they want to change within their local area. And then they'll do something about it. And then they'll make a website, they'll make an app, they use a data project, and then they'll do something about it. So ethical hacking is kind of that mentality, but also mostly around this keeping yourself safe, knowing the pitfalls, and how can hackers attack you, because as you know now, conflict has transcended from traditional sense of on the ground, and now it's a very digital thing. If you look at conflicts all over the world, there'll be many areas of using digital for propaganda reasons, of course.
Sure.
Very recently, talk about the Ukraine Russia conflict. At the start of that, there was a deep fake of President Zelensky, who was making a speech about return home, don't fight, and all that, which had very big connotations. But then also, it doesn't just happen in peace and conflict. I mean, was it last year? I think the Canadian elections, and there was an interview with Justin Trudeau with Joe Rogan, who's a very controversial podcast host, and they did this interview, which is obviously really fake, so it has that connotation. So, but with ethical hacking, it's just kind of taking all that into mind, and giving people the basic skills, because let's face it, if someone's going to do a training course, they're not going to be ethical hacking experts after doing a course. But yeah, ethical hacking is just to protect yourself from espionage and intelligence gathering and sabotage, disruption, cyber attacks, especially on military. At the moment, propaganda, cyber terrorism again is another big thing. So, but this ethical hacking for peace, the course is called, and it's actually open. If anyone's interested in peace building or learning about peace building, you can go and sign up. You can find it. It's funded by the European Union via a project called Augmenta, which is, I touched on it before. It's how can we use AI for pedagogical frameworks, and what we're doing with this project is we're trying to gather data of the skills of our peace builders or activists, and what the cybersecurity skills that they need in order to protect themselves online. Because in regards to peace building, data is gold. Basically, the data that people collect is gold for humanitarian purposes. Nobody should have access to that and use it for harm. And so this is the idea around our idea of ethical hacking, and what we want to promote within the course. And it's self-paced, so yes, please do sign up. It's via us, the Austrian Centre for Peace, or you can visit the Kaunas Technical University in Lithuania, who is our direct partner within Augmenta, and they're running it through them. And they also have a certificate as well. So go and try it out, Niall. Let me know how you get on.
Yeah, okay. I'll consider that, Nathan. I don't know whether I'll be an A-star student, but it sounds really, really interesting. And you pointed out there that the many uses of ethical hacking, and I couldn't help thinking that these are all going to massively explode. I mean, AI, deepfakes, sort of propaganda, the way that social media is used via bots and so on. I mean, it's just it's off the scale, isn't it? So I just sort of have the feeling that it's kind of always chasing to keep up with the latest new thing in technology that bad actors have come up with.
It's terrifying. I mean, like for now, with AI, for example, with AI precision, an AI model can land a bomb on a very, very precise area, which a human can't do. But I try not to cloud the mind with war tech and how tech can be used for war, because obviously using tech for peace is a big enough thing. And
sure.
I think I think more space needs to be done for that. And but unfortunately, in a lot of situations, is war means money, and peace isn't as sexy as war. But maybe one day we can use tech as a medium to promote that peace can be just as sexy as war.
You've been very humble because you haven't mentioned this, but you've got a book out in the summer through your efforts and renown in open data, and it's called Open Data for Everybody, which I think really sums up a lot of what you've said this afternoon. So tell me more about what that book is about and why you've written it.
So there's the two ways I can explain this, really. So for one, the first one with the negative one, so I'll get this out of the way. So the negative one is, I was really pissed off with how digital systems are created and how they're so uninclusive to third sector organizations and people like volunteers and NGOs, and and it just made me really angry to see people excluded just because of like money and corporations who would use data in the first instance, and just kind of like use that data. And so again, I went to work at this very early on in my career and trying to understand why the perception of data is this. And I used to sit on these things called smart city commissions, and sit around the table with like all these people who come from innovation centers and the universities and etc., and high powered people. And then they'll talk around the table, and it's just nonsense. It's just people like hearing the sound of their own voice, and nothing ever got done. and it was just kind of like a backpacking thing. And you know, in want of a better word, I won't swear, but I thought it was just balls. And so this is, so with all this work and I saw this happening, I thought this isn't right and it's unjust, really. So that's a negative one. And the positive one is it's my love letter to open data, I guess, and you know how, and it's transformative change and how it can actually make a difference within community organisations. We touched upon it before, and you know we talked about how we can improve the capacity of third sector organisations, everything from funding, holding decision makers accountable. How can they base their data on, you know, what they're doing and how they can promote themselves and put themselves out there. Open data can legitimately do that. Like, you don't need skills in order to use open data. You don't need digital skills to do that. The problem is it's just like painted in a way that isn't accessible to people, and like that's just nonsense. And so I went out and I spent a large part of my career trying to find out why this is, and then as I went through my career and working with local governments, especially because I did some work with the UK government, and I was working with local governments, and then you kind of found these people who were just saying about to sit around the room and they make themselves, they listen to their own voices, they pat their own backs, and then nothing happens. UK governments, UK local authorities will follow these kind of people. And so I'm trying to, we created a project called Data Brew, and we aim to bring together community organisations with local government people in order to create more inclusive policy. And the way I did that was like, because you know a lot of government workers work in silos and they're quite competitive with each other. So me going to, look, I'm going to bring the community, your policy isn't working, let's do this. That wouldn't fly with people like that. You just need to say to them, look, let's make a more robust policy. You can learn from the needs of local third sector, then use that for policy. But what I was doing, I was being a bit naughty because I was trying to train these people, the government people, in the power of open data and why they should start to think a little bit different. And then from there, I started to work with various international governments around the world and running these things called policy hackathons, which is where you kind of, again, what I just said, but bringing that together on a bigger scale. And I made loads of mistakes. I met loads of people. I learned so much about how open data can be used for social good. I learned loads about boring stuff like data compliance and how you can make open data more accessible and how you can do it yourself and how you don't need a degree to do that. You just need a mindset to make change. And so basically open data for everybody, using the open data for social good, it's a bit of a mouthful. Just that. So it's look, all the practical knowledge and everything what I learned throughout my career, everything that broke down doors, what open data is, what data compliance is, how we can form your own policies, how you can train your staff, and there's even a training course within the book as well, but all explained in the way that an activist would understand. So the language, I mean, if you're a data scientist, this book ain't for you. I want this for the local volunteers, the champions who are fighting against the tide, and they need to be more agile and think more openly about how they work and promote themselves. That's for them. And I wrote this book with the mindset that people would pass it around. It's not a big book. People would pass it around and use it, and and use all the passages to build the capacity within their own organisations. But again, come back to this when we talked about earlier on, making life hard for people, making life hard for our decision makers, and make sure that instead of the corporate organisations set on the agenda and setting our digital politics, which is still happening now, by the way, they start to think about, look, there's a different group here. And but I mean, I know that's a bit positive and negative, but also I want local governments to use the knowledge in the book as well, because a lot of it is tailored for if you're local government or if you're government, and you want to use open data as a medium to interact with communities, this is how you do it, because for them it's win-win, because if the communities are coming to them to tell them their needs, that means they have to do less outreach in some circumstances, not always, obviously, because we don't want to cut outreach, but in certain ways around digital, instead of paying X tech organization to run 5 projects around cities, they can just go to the communities themselves and get them to do it.
So that's brilliant. Sounds like a brilliant read, especially if you're in the position of wanting to address issues with your local authority. And I do recognise the image that you have shared there of local authority employees sometimes. but yeah, no, I think that sounds like a great book. So that it's called Open Data for Everybody, and it's published by who, Nathan?
Coming out of Taylor and Francis.
Taylor and Francis, brilliant. Okay.
Yeah, so being all good bookshops. I mean, I saw it in W.H. Smith's the other day, and I did shriek a little bit. So on the website.
Yeah, no, good. Well, you should be very proud, and I'll look out for that as well. So, Nathan, thank you very much indeed for being on the show. I look forward to reading your book. Would you have people, if they're in a community organisation in the UK, would they be able to approach the centre to see, to what could be offered in terms of working with PeaceTech for a small organisation in the UK? I mean, how does one navigate the system there?
Yeah, I think the best thing to do is, so we were talking before about setting up our own innovation community development lab. The best thing to do would be to go to openpeacetech.org, trying to remember the domain myself, and that will be set up soon. And I think it's holding pages live now. But depending on when you listen to this podcast, listeners, if it's not live yet, it will be soon, and there'll be loads of resources on there. And of course, I am always welcome to my fellow activists to reach out, and I'm sure we can always find spaces for people.
All right, brilliant. Thanks so much, Nathan. So thank you very much, Nathan Coyle, for being on Communikarma. For everybody else, I hope that you've enjoyed listening and watching Nathan, and do check out some of the other videos on Communikarma, and also a bit of a plug here, but please do consider subscribing and getting notifications on the show. And I look forward to seeing you next time with yet another guest sharing their story with me. So see you soon.